and welcome back to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video we're going to be concentrating on the use and abuse of power across the play Macbeth. It's set in a time and place where political and social stability depended on there being a firm ruler who held the power. Scotland, when the play opens, is under threat from external and internal forces. We've got the Norwegian king attacking from the north of the country, and at the same time we've got rebellious thanes Cawdor and Macdonald who are fighting King Duncan's army. The country's on the brink of chaos and it needs strong leadership to get it back on track and keep it there. In this video I want to establish what power looks like as the play unfolds and offer you some analysis of quotations to fuel your arguments. Why not though, at this moment in time, hit subscribe and join my tribe for all things English, literary and grammatical. Let's get into it. Duncan is a good and virtuous king. Even his murderer, Macbeth, admits that. His virtues will plead like angels trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off. So that simile, juxtaposed against deep damnation, really emphasises the good virtues he has as a king. But Duncan is not physically strong enough to lead his army into battle anymore, and he relies on people like Macbeth, whom he trusts to help him. It's really difficult to believe that a respected king like Duncan would have such poor judgment in selecting men for favour and promotion who seem to let him down. He laments the rebellious Thane of Cawdor, the last one, as a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust. And yet he still awards the title to Macbeth, a man who we know already harbours thoughts of regicide. We can now see that Duncan might possess these divine authoritative qualities and kingly virtues, but his judgment and military power, they've faded. Under his rule, Scotland is sliding into chaos. It's clear that the country needs a new ruler who wields both military, political and moral authority, alongside being able to regain stability and peace. Unfortunately for Scotland, the man who seizes the throne is maybe physically stronger, but is certainly morally weaker. He's undeniably a powerful force on the battlefield. We know he's carved out his passage through the enemy until he faced the rebellious Macdonald and then sliced him in two from the nave to the chops. And alongside having soldierly strength, he's got these dangerous ambitions, that vaulted ambition that his desire to rule is based on himself, selfishness, and solely that rather than any responsibility towards his country. Those dark desires and power for its own sake can only lead to disaster. Macbeth's lust for power might have remained just that if it weren't for the fact he's married to a woman whose longing to be queen is greater than his own. From the moment she hears of the witch's prophecies, she's determined for her husband to fulfill them. Her power lies in her knowledge of her husband's personality and what makes him tick. And actually, when Macbeth's conscience in Act 1, Scene 7 recalls to him the damage this would do for him to kill his king, it is she who bends him to her will by bombarding him with emotional blackmail. We see across 50 lines in Act 1, Scene 7 what she does to ensure that he will kill the king. She ensures that he understands if he doesn't kill, he's a coward. If he chooses to avoid murdering Duncan, that makes him weak as a man. She refers to him in terms of being a bad husband and someone who's breaking a promise. All of these are arguments that don't hold up to scrutiny when you use logic, but it works on Macbeth. Lady Macbeth's power has taken grit. Her persuasion doesn't just come from an intimate knowledge of her husband, it's also her ability to call upon the supernatural, in particular, evil spirits, that she seeks to fill her from the crown to the toe top full of direst cruelty, in order to steel herself for the dreadful nature of murder. Calling on powers like this to help in moments of crisis is not just restricted to those hell-bent on evil either. Interestingly enough, when the witches tell Banquo that his descendants will be kings, he seeks out merciful powers to hold back cursed thoughts. So supernatural powers are subject to use or misuse by those who need their help. Those determined on evil call on hellish powers, and those who aim to do good things, they invoke goodness from heaven to support them in moments of weakness where they're thinking of cursed thoughts. Macbeth learns early into his reign that his power that he's attained through murdering the rightful king will bring him no contentment. He says, to be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. And the adverb safely is critical here. He knows he's chosen this perilous road, and he can also understand what is happening in his kingdom. His subjects live in fear of him. We have the rightful heirs who fleed in the form of Malcolm and Donalbain. We also have Macduff, who refuses to attend the coronation, and as if that weren't enough, we know that the natural order of things is distorted completely. Horses are eating each other. We have animals that are meant to be the prey eating the predator. In essence, all we need to accept is his grip on power is tenuous, and he feels insecure and paranoid because he hasn't got it in the right way. And he knows, as long as Banquo lives, Macbeth will only have a fruitless crown and a barren sceptre because of what the witches prophesied over Banquo. Macbeth's chief power across the play is his ability to eliminate those who stand in his way, as we saw in the description of him on the battlefield. And so begins his tyrannical, bloody, butcherous reign. He doesn't possess all the necessary kingly attributes to rule well or wisely. The fact that he seeks to murder his friend, Banquo, and attempts to kill his son shows us that Macbeth intends to abuse the power he has to unleash the evil and terror upon his subjects. And if that weren't enough, it's only once we have seen the ghost of Banquo haunt him at the banquet that we learn that he's even more determined to act ruthlessly against those who challenge him. He says he is in blood's steps so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as going over. He's stuck. And he knows that his kingship will be one of unbridled bloodshed and complete savagery. Scotland has become a distorted version of a battlefield on which Macbeth is powerful, unstoppable, and frankly, just a tyrant. Whilst Macbeth's grip on power continues to propel the plot of Macbeth, Lady Macbeth's power diminishes. After the banquet scene, we are yet to see her until Act 5, and then we see her wandering the halls, reenacting the various horrors for which she and Macbeth are responsible. When she says, "Yet who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him?" we recognise she is reliving the trauma, tormented and broken by the hellish power she has unleashed. It's a really fascinating strategic decision from Shakespeare to ensure that this couple are not on stage together after the banquet scene. It affirms the personal brokenness of their relationship in pursuit of power, and it also shows that Macbeth as tragic hero is on his downward fall because his power and strength really came from her goading him on. With each murder he commits, he sinks further into his own nightmare of hell. And actually, he comes to see that nothing he can do can salvage his authority. We learn in Act 4, when Macduff tells Malcolm that each day new widows howl, new orphans cry, new sorrows strike heaven on the face. Scotland is suffering under his reign. If it's not the repetition of new that shows us that, or heaven being striked on the face, that verb is so violent. We learn from the emphatic sounds of the people of Scotland that this is wrong. But we also recognise that Macbeth will not let go without a fight. When he says in Act 5, life is but a walking shadow, what we recognise by this is how futile he sees his existence and how he will not let go of power. He refuses to surrender or die nobly, and he's determined to drag as many people down with him into the void. Having ruled by the sword, when he dies by the sword, no one's mourning his loss. Malcolm, who takes rightful place as king at the end of the play, leaves us with hope for this country, that it can achieve lasting peace, order. He's got every sort of power that a good ruler should have. For the time he has a divine mandate, God is on his side. He's his father's chosen successor. He's wise enough to test Macduff's loyalty in Act 4 when he arrives in England, and he's strong enough to lead his army into battle and make sure he gets rid of the butcher Macbeth. His closing speech outlines his intentions. He seems reasonable, fair, wise. At last, we feel there's some power that's been balanced out, and good has won over evil. That's not to say, though, that Macbeth is not a cautionary tale. It certainly is. It shows us how those who abuse their power and bring nothing but corruption and destruction are going to ruin society. Macbeth sought only power for its sake and did not accept all the responsibility that went with it. Once a brave warrior, now a hated butcher, brought low by his own desires. In the words of Macduff, not in the legions of horrid hell can come a devil more damned in evils to top Macbeth. That's proof that power certainly corrupts. I hope, though, this knowledge is power